often the best finds in history come about completely by accident, and that's what happened in France.
You see, a previously unknown copy of Shakespeare's first folio has surfaced in northern France, and we sent Sabri Bhatti to find out more.
Only around 230 copies of this book are known to exist. The latest discovery makes this only the second in France. And now, here it is, Shakespeare's first folio. It contains 36 plays. First published 7 years after the poet's death, it is now highly prized by scholars and one of the most valuable books in English literature. The book was unearthed accidentally by librarian and historian Remy Cordonnier. He'd been carrying out research for a planned exhibition on the historic links between the small French town of Saint-Omer and the United Kingdom.
When getting into the book, we realized quite fast that it wasn't an 18th century book, but probably earlier one. So trying to identify precisely the edition, we use several tools.
The book includes renowned plays such as Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet and The Tempest, but 30 pages are missing, including the title page with its iconic portrait of the writer. With no original manuscripts remaining, Shakespeare scholars frequently rely on subtle differences between copies of the folio to make their judgments about his works.
The first edition of his complete works is the oldest source for studying his plays. So it's very important. We know that there were approximately 1,000 exemplary at the origin, and there is only 233 now identified.
William Shakespeare is perhaps the most famous English poet, playwright and actor. He is widely regarded as the greatest writer in English. His 38 plays, 154 sonnets and 2 narrative poems are studied by students of literature across the world. The book has been authenticated by scholar Erik Rasmussen, who is from the University of Reno in Nevada. It's being kept at this library in France. The venue already contains a large collection of rare works, including a copy of the Gutenberg Bible. Remy Cordonnier says he's proud to have made the discovery and honoured to be bringing such a rare piece of art to light.
Wow, what an amazing discovery.
I know, imagine finding something like that and just stumbling upon it.
I know, absolutely. And they're so intricate, these books, when you see them. Honestly, I'd love to just have a collection of them.
Yeah. Well, here to tell us more about this exciting discovery, we're joined by book specialist Adam Douglas from Peter Harrington. Good evening, Adam. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Now, it must be quite an exciting time in the world of literature, right?
Well, it's exciting for the librarian who finds something like that in their cupboard, yeah. I mean, that's every librarian's dream, I would have thought.
Finding a book of such a historical significance.
Absolutely, if you're just doing a little housekeeping and then you find something like that.
So what makes this particular folio so interesting and unique?
Well, it's just the status of Shakespeare, really. There isn't, you know, he's really the first author who collected his plays together into one volume. Ben Jonson did it a few years earlier, but he'd been sort of rather laughed at. But Shakespeare's, it's 7 years after Shakespeare's death, and they collect together in one volume 36 of his plays. So there's only a couple of plays that can be attributed to missing from that. And half of them only appear in this printed book. So if it hadn't been for this book being printed, we wouldn't have half of Shakespeare's plays. He simply wouldn't be the figure that he is in the world of literature, and the English language would be the poorer, because Shakespeare's the originator of so many phrases. He's a wonderful phrase maker, and so many figures of speech that we use, so many lines we know from his plays. They all come from this one book.
Well, the interesting thing is that this folio is missing about 30-odd pages, right?
Yeah, I understand. Yes, I haven't seen the book myself, but they quite often, books of this era can miss pages, lack pages, and of course, you know, collectors. I'm a bookseller, so I'm always trying to sell the most complete copy I can of any book, and it does detract from the value of them in commercial terms when they're lacking. But it's also probably why this book wasn't recognised for so long, because it doesn't have the famous portrait of Shakespeare at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And if it's in France and just sitting in a library, an English book might not, you know, people might not pay much attention to it.
Adam, what are we looking for in a book like this? What can someone like yourselves, like you said, a bookseller, learn from something like this?
Well, I think it's always to look at every book. That's always a thing. We find books, you know, in the most unlikely places. I work with somebody who found a fantastic copy of the first edition of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, just going through his grandfather's books. And when he opened it, he saw that actually inside it was inscribed by Mary Shelley to Lord Byron, and he'd been there the night that they first had a storytelling competition about Frankenstein. So you need to look at your books in every respect. You need to look at whether something's inscribed in it, or whether the book is complete, or actually what you've got.
I imagine it must be very exciting when you discover these books of, you know, the original first editions. I know you've brought us a special...
Well, I brought you a Shakespeare folio so that you can see what they're like.
Wow.
Now, this is not a first folio. This is the fourth folio. It was printed 4 times in the 17th century. So this is the fourth.
So this is from 1685.
1685, that's right. And as you can see, it's got the famous portrait of Shakespeare there.
Oh, wow.
Set opposite the title page. So you can see all the plays. And what they've got there in France, their book doesn't have those opening leaves there. It just starts there with the Tempest. So you can see how it's not so readily recognisable if it's just the Tempest. As soon as you see that, I think everybody kind of recognises, okay, that's Shakespeare.
It's so iconic.
Absolutely.
And that's the portrait that would have appeared in all of these books.
All the first 4 editions had this portrait, yes. And it has verses underneath by his friend Ben Jonson saying that this is a true likeness of him. So it's very good evidence that this is what Shakespeare looked like, probably in the latter part of his career.
That's incredible. It looks fascinating. But what's special about this particular edition?
This edition is just, it's not as special as the one that's been found in France, but it just shows you what the book would look like when it was issued. This is the kind of binding that you would buy it in. It's an English calf binding. This one's had some restoration, so it looks in better condition probably than the one in Saint-Omer. But it's that kind of thing. It's a sort of... It's a large book, and that's what was also an innovation, is that nobody printed plays before in a large grand book like this. Before it had been religious books, it'd be the Bible or something in England. But this one here is for the first time they're printing plays in a very grand format, in a folio.
How many plays are in this particular book?
This one has got 7 more than the first folio. They added some. Unfortunately, 6 of them are not by Shakespeare, so it doesn't help greatly. But there are 36 in the original and an extra 7 in this.
Great. And if anyone wants to find out more about rare books and old books, how can they get in touch with you guys?
Well, we have a website, peterharrington.co.uk, and all the contact details are there. And you can even see little films of me talking about other editions of Shakespeare, actually, and various other books.
Brilliant. Thank you, and stay with us.
OK, thank you.